Welcome to Spoiler Talk, where we talk spoilers. I'm your host Kieran, and joining me via video link is Jax.
Hey, how are we?
Very well. We're still in lockdown, but making do. This week we're talking about The Mitchells versus the Machines, animated Netflix film, which came out recently. So Jax, I will ask you to deliver your thoughts on The Mitchells versus the Machines in 1 minute, starting right now.
So, Mitchells versus the Machines. A colourful, crazily energetic, frenetic, amazing animated short film that is hysterically funny. I thought it was one of the funniest films I've seen in recent history. It is kind of like if you grabbed the most generic kind of simple story of a robotic uprising / family vacation movie where it does all the beats you would expect, A to B to C, of everything you'd expect from a film like that. If you said the synopsis was, there's a robot uprising and only one family that's the most quirky, the quirkiest of quirky families, but maybe the dad and the daughter, they don't get along. One, he loves to build houses and he's all rustic and stuff, and the other girl's like, look at my videos, look at my YouTube dad, and they don't get along, but then maybe they get along by the end. But it is honestly that, but the best that could possibly be, and it is incredibly heartwarming and amazing, and I loved it to its core. I loved it. It's amazing. Check it out.
Perfect. All right. I'll pass it over to you now.
And a go.
This week, I watched a comedic, heartwarming, coming-of-age family drama centered on an artistic, misunderstood teenager, a female protagonist who must navigate emotional turmoil with her father, her mother, and her brother. It was amazing, rich, emotional, deep. It floored me. That movie was a movie called Coda. I thought The Mitchells versus the Machines was the cinematic, animated equivalent of an anxiety attack. I was not a fan of this movie. I thought the humor really missed the mark. I thought the budgetary constraints that were appealing about Into the Spider-Verse here felt like they were cutting corners, and I didn't have that same kind of rustic, appreciative feel that I had for it. And I think this movie just tipped me the wrong way. I'm not a fan of The Mitchells versus the Machines. So Jax, this will be an interesting discussion.
Okay. I've had a minor heart attack. I was not expecting that. Holy moly. Oh my God.
I was not expecting you to be so up on it, to be honest. I was pretty surprised, and then I was just thinking about delivering my thoughts and what you were All right, well, look, we actually had kind of a list of things that we're going to go through, but I'm just going to start on one that we didn't, just based on your brief 1 minute thoughts there. What did you think was funny about this movie?
Honestly, dude, almost all of it. I thought just joke to joke, second to second, I found it just so funny. So like it did all the things that I thought I would hate in a movie. It had so many jokes that were like meme culture and all that kind of stuff, where it's like at one point she's like, I want to stop the movie for a second, and my dad reminds me of that monkey meme. And I'm like, I don't even know what that monkey meme is. And the monkey's like, ah, ah, ah. And I'm like, I found the energy and the character and the style so overwhelming. And the first 10 minutes, and I think that carries over to maybe the first 40 minutes, where there's a point 40 minutes in where they're like, and it's the end of Act 1. And I'm like, isn't this the end of the movie? And I literally just clicked my remote, just time off. Just quickly check the time. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, there's still an hour to go. But I found the vibe and the energy of this film to be so pulsating and frenetic, and it kind of feels like, I don't know, to say it's like a ADHD, LSD kind of frenetic thing feels a bit kind of I don't know, the wrong way to put it, but there's just so much going on with the screen. And there are so many moments in this film where a character will be like, that's a good point, other character, and like 3 little love hearts would be like doo-doo-doo, coming out the side, or they'll like swing their hands across the screen, and a bunch of rainbows will pour out of their hands, and the visual energy coming off the screen and the way it kind of came about, I just felt was like really like intoxicating and just energetic, and it really like got me on board, and I found all the characters really, really funny. I thought the standout was the dad, who just like at points just totally couldn't understand his daughter, who loved YouTube and was a filmmaker and making all these robo cop, but what was it, like the dog cop videos and all these silly little YouTube videos with all these silly stuff. And there's a bit where like the dog is like throwing up hamburgers and eating them and doubling up and tripling up and going boom, 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 boom. And it really felt like they grabbed the essence of that kind of cultural difference between that older generation of like, you know, like the dad is the center point of that, where he's just like, I just want to be a lumberjack man and, you know, build a house for my family. And the daughter's like, look at my YouTube videos. Look at them, Dad. Look how amazing they are. Look how inspired I am. And he's like, but daughter, what if you fail? And she's like, no, you don't understand me. And he's like, oh, I don't understand her. And there's like a scene really early on where she's like, she says to another character, like, he just doesn't get me. And he's just like, I just don't get her. And like, I don't know. It's such a generic story of like 2 people who have like opposing kind of views on just how they experience the world. And it's such a like kind of generic story of how these kind of gel and vibe, and they slowly get to know each other's kind of issues. But there are moments where she's like, you know, like towards the end, she's like, oh my God, Dad, you liked the YouTube video or whatever he has to do at the end. And he's like, oh, yes, it was so simple. And then it cuts to him and he's like, ah! And he's like doing all the things, he's trying to get it, and it turns into Spanish. He's like, I don't know what to do. And he's just like having such trouble with the technology and stuff. And I just thought the voice performances were really strong. I thought the visual energy and stuff around everything was so strong. But I was laughing out loud continuously. Like at one point, he's like, we're going on a family road trip. Won't it be the best? And then there's a bit where he's like, I've got us mules. We're going to go up this steep, dangerous mountain. And she's like, won't that be tough? He's like, no, it'll be amazing. And then it smash cuts and there's like storming and screaming. And he's like, we got to go up the mountain. And it reminds me of like Lord of the Rings, where like, we can't cross. We've got to go through the mines of Moria. We can't cross through this stormy wasteland. And like, there's this whole extreme thing. And there's like a mule going down the river. And he's like, he's gone to the river now. And just, it was just so intense and so overwhelming that I think that maybe you could be kind of like, whoa, it's too much all of a sudden. But I just found it so exciting how much they were packing into it. And I think especially with the moments that would be like, they were like kind of freeze frame snapshots where like a car would jump off a thing and then it would freeze frame, and then like all of these rainbows would explode, all these like little picture kind of things would appear everywhere, and there was so much going on, but it never felt confused and overwhelming where I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. I felt like I understood what they were trying to get across. It felt like a picture book a little child would give you, where they've scribbled 10,000 things onto one page, but it kind of managed to managed to like kind of combined that all into something that visually worked, and I understood what they were trying to like sell in that moment. And I have to imagine that every single aspect of the film that I loved is what rubbed you the wrong way, as you put it.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of the time hearing you talk, I mean, we're kind of just saying the same thing and coming at it from a different direction. I just, I found the pace just relentless, and
yes, relentless, 100%.
There's a couple of times where it slows down for emotional beats, but for the most part, it just is hammering along, and it's as energetic as its lead character, which I don't know. I don't know why I didn't connect with the characters, but there was just something that rubbed me as inauthentic, or okay. It just didn't gel. The jokes weren't landing for me. It wasn't connecting with me. I kept, this film was sold kind of as, the studio, that brought us Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I absolutely loved. And it has a very similar kind of frenetic energy, and it's playing with ideas of animation that we have entrenched from, Pixar and DreamWorks, and playing with those. But what I found refreshing about Into the Spider-Verse, I guess I just kind of found grating about this movie. And I don't know why, because I was born in the 90s, so it was like, your seminal years, mine were in the 2000s, consuming all the type of stuff that this girl has kind of gone on, even though generationally she's about, 10 years behind me. We have that kind of similar overlap. I was a young filmmaker making crazy stuff. Shout out to my friend Shad, who recommended this film. He said that, we should watch it. I wasn't sure if he had seen it yet, but sorry, Shad, not a fan.
Well, thank you, old mate. Bloody loved it. One of my favourite comedies in recent history, yeah.
Well, the reason I brought him up, he was kind of my conduit into filmmaking in a big way. And he was I think I was in like year 8 of high school when I really started getting into making like short little funny, music videos and clips. And that, those years with him was kind of my initial film school. Not that I ever went to film school, but it felt very much like that. So I just felt like I should have been connecting. I connect with the kind of Syriac-esque design that she has going. There's that YouTuber, Syriac. I don't know if you're familiar with his stuff.
No, I didn't. I was just about to ask you what that word meant. So that's a YouTuber, is it?
Kind of crazy, zany, wild. I don't know if you call it postmodern, because there's just like inherently maybe like a sense of absurdity and lack of meaning, which in itself brings it a new meaning.
But 100%,
and Quentin Tarantino is often touted as a one of the postmodern filmmakers, and I really like his stuff. And I generally like this kind of clash of colors and energy and everything. But maybe one of the biggest points that was disconnecting me from things was the fact that it just commonly felt like the plot was just happening for the sake of happening. And it was less kind of involved with what the characters' abilities or interests or dynamics were, and things just happened for the sake of happening. It's like the mum has a big action sequence near the end just because that's the point to put it at, even though it wasn't earned and nothing really happened. There's a sequence in a shopping mall with a bunch of Furbies that just felt like it belonged in a different movie. And
I loved the Furby bit.
But who's that for? Like the generation it's aimed at, it felt like, the filmmakers that are all 40 years old are going to get the joke, but I don't know. And things can be cross-generational. I get that.
I think... Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say Shrek is one of the great examples of like, all the jokes work for kids, and then there's another set of jokes above it that work for the adults. And I just felt like neither of these were landing. I was like, this isn't a particularly good kids film, and for me, it's not a particularly engaging, like family entertainment for adults to watch beside their kids. I don't know. I don't even know that I can truly kind of articulate it. The best way I could was what I said in that 1 minute thing, where it just kind of felt like the cinematic animated equivalent of an anxiety attack. And that's sometimes ends up working for me. I would say that this movie takes a lot from Scott Pilgrim. It takes a lot from like family road trip films like National Lampoon's Vacation, and obviously takes lots from Into the Spider-Verse. And there's even like 2 direct Kill Bill musical cue references in the movie. So it's like it's referencing all these things I really like and connect with, but I don't know, just didn't ring true, just didn't connect. I just wasn't laughing. I just wasn't in. I kept waiting for it to pull me in. Because like I said, I watched a film called Coda, which had so many like strange similarities to this movie, the family dynamic and the setup. It's a very, very different movie. It's much more kind of drama. It's very funny as well. But, as something, I would say Coda is more drama than comedy, but I laughed the whole way through Coda. I was absolutely wetting myself, and it's because the humor was coming, not from the kind of Family Guy-esque gag side things, and more so from being integrated into the character and into the story, and like the humor coming out through these people. Whereas with the exception of the dad, maybe the other characters, the humor just felt, I don't know, forced and random.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to hear you say this, because, I mean, now I'm hearing you say it, I can understand 100% where you're coming from. I don't even know if we've ever recorded a film where I think we've essentially watched this. Sometimes, like, I think the film that always comes to mind is you'll go A, B, C, why Arrival is good. And I'm like, I watched that film, but I didn't watch that film. And I don't understand. And I wish I loved it, but maybe it's just the opposite of that, though, where, like,
yeah.
I feel like every single thing you said, I agree with. And that's why it's awesome. That's why I loved it so much. I haven't enjoyed an animated movie this much since Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Like, honestly, watching this and then Spider-Verse than this, I'm like, is Sony Pictures Animation Studio the new Pixar? Because the last Pixar movie I watched was the most boring, unoriginal, uninventive, just embarrassment of a film for me. I hated Luca, and every aspect of it felt lazy and boring and unfunny and unclever, and this just had so much character and feeling towards it, where I felt like they knew exactly what they wanted to do, and the way that it was so explosive with all these things kind of going on, that they were able to tell such a generic story of dad doesn't get daughter is like, why don't you get me, dad? But they get each other by the end, and the quirkiest family in the world stops the apocalypse. And like, saying that, I'm like, that sounds like a bad movie that I wouldn't enjoy. But it had all the things that
finish your point.
So I was just going to say, it had all the things that made me go, this is exactly like Lego Movie and Spider-Man Into the... Or more so Lego Movie in terms of, like, people were like, you got to watch Lego Movie, man. You'll love it. I'm like, I don't want to watch the Lego Movie. I've seen the trailer. They're all like... I just saw it and went, nah, not for me at all. And watching the trailer for this on Netflix, like, I flicked it on, and the little trailer or the scene plays, and I'm like, it's not for me. And my brother was like, that's pretty good, check it out. And I'm like, I'm not going to. I don't know, there's something about it. But when I actually sat and watched it, almost immediately I was just like overwhelmed by how much I enjoyed the style it was going for. It felt so unique while doing something so ununique.
We come at the Lego Movie from exactly the same place. I felt the same way. I thought it would be like, when you hear the Emoji Movie get announced, you're like, it's going to be
the worst thing I've never seen.
Yeah, and I just have no intention of ever seeing it. I loved Lego growing up, but man, I don't want a Lego Movie, but I want a Lego Movie. That was great. I really, really enjoyed it. And
honestly, spectacular movie. And it has that... Lego Movie probably does a better job of bringing that heart, like, when it cuts into the live action at the end. Like, I remember being utterly floored. And, like, I'm not an emotional guy. I won't cry at any movie, but that got the tears where they're like, we're pushing through your eardrums, we're coming. And I'm like, oh my God, this movie! And, I mean, to even compare it to Spider-Verse, I think is almost a little unfair. I think Spider-Verse could be one of the best films I've ever seen. I literally love all 12 Spider-Man movies we've got, but it could be the best one by, a stretch. It really is really great. But this movie had something kind of, I think, going for it that I didn't expect, in that it had a story, whereas as soon as it started playing out, like, they're fighting over the laptop at first and it smashed on the ground, and she's like, this is exactly why I want to get out of this house. And I'm just kind of like cut to my core. I'm like, this is something like I personally can't relate to. My mum was like pretty supportive as a parent, but that unsupportive parent that just doesn't really understand that artistic drive in you. And but then as the film progresses, I really found that performance really rang true, and like I felt really sincere and honest with the differences between them. And it does some pretty basic stuff where, he's got a little wooden toy thing that he loves, and then he takes it off in a flashback in the video from the house that he has to give up to support his family and move on and have that family. And they all kind of connect in those ways. But I mean, just all the things where it's like, Jax, if I told you there was a film where the villain it's a little iPhone, and the iPhone's like, I'm sick of you tapping my face, tap my face, and you made my the next person above me, you made the new technology, you made it on me, and all this stuff where it's like, none of that sounds good. But as I was watching and it played out, I'm like, I'm buying this. This is working for me. And it had this energy. Like, honestly, at the end, when it played that Rihanna song, and they all, and you said you didn't like when the mum goes all action hero at the end, but there's a bit where she's like, I have taken on the machines and I will give them what's coming to them. And then the little kid pokes out and he's like, ha ha ha, Mum's scary now. And I'm just like, I'm so on board. I was laughing out loud. I found the action and the visuals and the spectacle of it all so amazing. And I think it really comes down to those little beats, like a character would swing and there'd be all this other stuff coming out from the sides. And there was those little things that like Spider-Verse did really well, where like a character would fly up and you'd see them going like, and the AHAH kind of, bit would like fly up with them. And it was subtle, like it appears so they'd slap something, a little slap thing would appear and it's stuff where you almost don't notice it, but it complements the scene and the surroundings of it all. And I remember when I was watching this, I'm like, this is like the Lego movie and Spider-Verse combined with, your Terminator kind of robo-apocalypse kind of thing and your vacation movies and all that stuff. And then I Googled it and it's like, this was brought, and like a poster said, brought to you by by the guys who brought you Lego Movie and Spider-Verse. I'm like, they've perfected how to bring those extra elements in via animation the way that a live action movie never really could do in that way.
Except
I found
Scott
that very
Pilgrim.
Exciting. Oh, sorry, actually, we actually talked about that before we recorded today. You were mentioning Scott Pilgrim, and I was biting my lip, being like, don't mention the thing, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's 100% like that. And I haven't watched Scott Pilgrim since it came out, but honestly, I think now, my sensibilities now, and maybe it might even just be now in the lockdown and I don't know, I don't want to say it, but like the world we live in right now compared to when I did watch Scott Pilgrim, I found it a bit overwhelming and a bit too much, and it didn't really vibe with me. I wonder if that amazing, frenetic, fun energy might really kind of capture me more so than it did before. I don't know.
Yeah, you should give it another go. I think it's a wonderful movie. But I think it can see with, just how I've experienced the Mitchells versus the Machines, how, it can rub people the wrong way. I don't know if it's a sensibility thing, because, the Lego Movie and Spider-Verse and Scott Pilgrim, like I love all these things, but it's almost as if like with Into the Spider-Verse, the integration of the little animated flourishes being like tied into like comic books and all of the art style kind of looping back around and kind of building on what we know from comic books, and even using like, interesting visual things like depth of field is exaggerated by having like the typical comic book printed spots that you get for areas that are meant to be out of focus, and then things are sharp info. Like lots of little tricks and flourishes that are the result of having a very low budget, but actually like kind of the result of having that lower budget mean they had to be more creative and make up for it with these things. And I can see that same concept here, and they're doing exactly the same thing, not with comic books, but with this female protagonist's, kind of visionary filmmaking art style. I don't know, like I can watch it and appreciate it, but I'm not laughing and I'm not engaging and it's not connecting, and I'm not sure why.
I wonder if the difference is like maybe, and I'm just spitballing, honestly, just shut me up if I'm going on the wrong path, but I think with Spider-Verse, it feels more kind of directly in response to a thing like Spider-Verse is, Spider-Man, he's a comic dude. Like and so the things they're grasping with and the things they're doing feel very directly related to the comic thing, and they do some certain things that if you don't notice, but if you do notice, they make a lot of sense. Like when he's not Spider-Man and he's learning to be Spider-Man, the frame rate is slower. And then when he becomes like, so him and old Peter Parker are different and they're jarring, and it might be like, I could see someone maybe even going, oh, I didn't get that. But if you understand what's happening, and then when he becomes Spider-Man at the end, when he does the leap of faith at the end, like one of the greatest moments ever, and like, also, I just gotta say, the soundtrack of Spider-Verse is one of the best soundtracks ever, of just putting songs in, and some songs made for it, some I don't think were, but like the way they've incorporated all of those elements, and then the fluidity of everything, and the way it kind of uses certain elements, and the way it kind of crafts those extra bits, like the way he'll be like with the spider webs, and it'll say whip, whip, and little whip sound, like little words will pop up near his arms as he's, you know, shooting the webs, and all these things. You go, well, yeah, like a comic, you know, and in its basicest form, it's just like a comic. Whereas I think this one, to me, it really felt like they went, it's like one of the directors had a daughter who kept picking up her math book, and instead of having math equations on it, it was just colors of like, and pictures and stuff of like unicorns and donkeys and rainbows and stuff, where he's like, there's a lot of colorful energy coming off this page, but you didn't answer 2 + 2 here. You drew a unicorn shooting laser beams out of its eyes, and that kind of energy and vibe. And it really felt like they put that onto the screen. And literally just saying that, I'm like, that doesn't... But if you watch the movie, I think you would understand what I mean when I say that. Where it has this kind of insanity and this frenetic, crazy energy that is kind of seeping out of the film in a way that I think... Honestly, if I was in a bad mood, I'd be like, I can't watch this. It's too much. But I honestly can't remember the last time I laughed so much. Like, I found it so funny, so engaging, so wholesome and heartwarming, in kind of like, and my biggest kind of not compliment to the film would be, not compliment, that's what I mean, like disservice to the film be, it is very generic, but I almost find it overwhelmingly, not, what am I saying? So I found it almost sincere and amazing how they're able to push such a generic story of quirky family versus the apocalypse road trip film, but they made me really care for it. And, you know, there were beats and moments in the film where I'm like, yep, we're up to the act 2 and into the 3rd act. And she's like, well, damn, we tried our hardest now as the hero who's been like, Dad, you've got to verse the apocalypse. And the dad's like, actually, you said we could do this earlier, and now I'm on your side, daughter. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so in.
But, okay. I want to, yeah. So this is a part of the like character stuff that I just really think this is why I'm disconnected from it. It's just because just because they decide that they're going to stop the machine takeover and then they go do it, they don't achieve it through beats and, you know, character things that were set up earlier in the film, and through some form of ingenuity and seeing the world differently that enables them to overcome obstacles. Things just happen because they happen. Like, it's a rush.
Do you mean like the dog thing, the robots think the dog is a loaf of bread? Do you mean that bit? Like, what do you mean specifically?
Well, I mean just like the mum fighting everyone, or them, you know,
because her children were in trouble.
Or they put on machine outfits and just like walk in, and then they get caught.
Like a Star Wars,
stuff
a
happens.
reference.
Yeah, but in Star Wars it makes sense because they're just dudes in a thing, but they're actually robot. Like, things just happen because they happen, and they're not rooted in character, and they're not rooted in kind of like if she had created some type of, I don't even know how you do it, because it's just so far off the mark. Things just happen. Like, they survive the apocalypse just by pure happenstance, not because they're better than anyone else. It's just luck. Yeah, everyone else gets caught and they don't. And then the only real kind of little bit of ingenuity is just putting like a tarp over the car and drawing the lines on it. And then that just happens to work, and they get to the next spot, and then a bunch of crap happens, and then they get out of that, and then a bunch of crap happens. And it's just like, you're relentlessly like throwing all of these things at me, and you have this little bit of downtime to fill in all the character stuff and to give kind of motivation and direction for the characters, but they don't use any of that to overcome an obstacle. They don't win because they're a unique family with... do you see what I'm saying? Like,
I totally understand what you're saying, but like, for instance, with the tarp sequence, I think that is like that's kind of the core of the story, where she's like, okay, so imagine if the car, and we hit it and we put lines of it so it looks like the road, so robots from the sky,
sure, but that's
it's just the road.
That's got nothing to do with her. But that has nothing
but that is kind of a crazy, eccentric idea.
No, it's not. That's a very simple idea. And thinking about how aerial photography would work, I mean, it probably would.
But the dad's not an aerial photographer. He's more of like, just the guy who wants to build a wooden house.
Yeah, and neither is she. She just makes like crazy, zany videos. It's not kind of even related to her skill set.
I guess I just see it as like a kind of, that's an expression of her expression and like her kind of creativity and him not vibing with it. And then he goes along with it, but due to them kind of, not being able to jive and like work together, it kind of falls apart a little bit as he's trying to teach her something that he finds useful, like driving stick, driving manual if we're in Australia. But like, and then it kind of falls apart a bit. And I think, you know what? Honestly, everything you're saying, I'm like, I can understand why you're not vibing with it. But it really worked for me. Even just the little stuff where like the little kid was like, I love a dinosaur. And that other kid's like, I love a dinosaur. And he's like, shut up, I hate you, go to hell. And he runs away because he's so shy. And just, I don't know, just everything about it, I just found it so charming and fun and just exciting in a
I was waiting for that
way
to come up in the film, the brother and his love of like, where's the point where that comes back and you use that?
Well, the brother and the mum do get sidelined because the film is very focused on the dad and the daughter dynamic. And I think sometimes when you focus heavily on, a certain dynamic, others kind of get lost in the shuffle. And they definitely do in comparison. But I found all the voice acting and the characterization and stuff, I don't know, I guess I was just on board. Like, just some of the, like, I
like the performances.
Stuff.
I like the voice acting. I thought that was particularly good, especially recently after watching Marvel's What If. It's really made me appreciate the level of skill on offer here from kind of everyone. Even Eric André, who I love, who's probably the worst voice actor in the movie.
Who's he in this film?
He's like the tech guy.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Actually, if we can talk about something that I do think is a little undeveloped, the villain is his iPhone. So we essentially have your Mark Zuckerberg, your bloody whatever, whoever the hell, that kind of character.
Steve Jobs, Elon Musk type.
Your Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, bloody whatever. Jeffrey Bezos.
Also, weirdly, this is weirdly prophetic. Did you see Elon Musk just unveiled like an almost identical looking robot? It's crazy.
I did. Yeah. And it freaked me out because I'm like, this guy... Did no one show him iRobot? / did no one show him this movie? / did no one show him The Terminator? Has he not watched any movies that have ever existed? I mean, not that movies, they're going to come true. But my God, it's just like, man hasn't watched a movie. Don't make your iPhone into a man. Don't make it into a robot man. What are you doing? And that's literally the plot of this movie. He's like, look at this iPhone. It's the greatest thing we've ever seen. And he throws it in a bin. He's like, this robot here that has arms and legs, it can do everything. And I think maybe just how modern and how kind of on the nose of like the memes and the pop culture and the we all touch our phones too much and all this stuff, I felt like I thought I would expect it to be grating and frustrating, but I actually found it really like refreshingly fun and kind of like yeah, well, I don't know, man. I've literally in the last 2.5 weeks become obsessed with TikTok due to you being like, get on TikTok, Jax. And I'm like, maybe I will, maybe I won't. And then I downloaded it. What's my favorite thing in the world now? It's TikTok. It's so good. I love it. I love it so much.
And I want to say to the audience, anyone, if you think you're too old for TikTok or...
Shut up and get on TikTok!
You've got enough social media, any of this stuff. No, it's the place to be at the moment. It's incredible. There are incredible creative people on there. There is stuff for everyone. Whatever your interest is, the algorithm is incredibly fast and sharp. The only thing I would say is it's incredibly addictive and be careful.
Oh, it's scary addictive, man. Like if you've got too much time on your hands, which a lot of us do in lockdown, be careful. Set a time limit.
Well, it's partly due to, I think the rise of TikTok is directly correlated with the pandemic and lockdown. And I think that these two things have kind of, not even, like no one planned this. it just, the two things happened at the same time, and the big boom of TikTok kind of occurred over 2020 and has just continued on. And it's, you know, it's created just like YouTube and Vine and all these other platforms created all these like stars and entertainers and creatives. TikTok's doing the same thing, and it's a different format. And yeah, it just learns very quickly, and it just keeps giving you what you want. So if you use it the right way, it's very, very engaging and very fun.
And you can filter through the stuff you dislike.
Yes,
quickly,
just don't engage with it. That's the key. You just go past, keep flicking,
swipe away, and you are going to find stuff. Like, I have been overwhelmed with the stuff I found, but it does remind me quite a lot of what kind of works for me with this film, where it's just like, as someone who's like, I'm not even that old. I'm not the dad in this movie where I'm 45. I didn't build this house. I bloody bought it with my job, you know, or work at a supermarket. Like, it's not like I'm like I built this house and I'm a lumberjack man. I'm out doing like labor. I'm not like a landscaper or, you know, a plumber or something, and, you know, unable to understand this technology. I love making films. So I felt like I was kind of right in the middle of being like, maybe I'm too old for things like a TikTok or this or that. But also when the daughter does all her character stuff, I'm like, oh man. And so many times where I'm like, I love a film. Look at this thing. Look at this thing. And then someone will look at me being like, I'm not a part of that. And like, it just felt like it bridged that gap. And like, I felt like maybe feeling like I'm right in the middle, where I'm not so young that I was like born on the TikTok, but so old that it feels too far away. And I felt like being kind of in the middle, it bridged those gaps where I could understand the dad and the daughter at once. And they both had points where I'm like, oh, daughter character, couldn't you just understand where your dad's coming from? Like, he loves you. He doesn't want you to fail, but he doesn't understand your stupid YouTube dog videos where the dog's the cop. But then the dad, I'm like, oh, dad, I mean, she's quite talented. That dog video was pretty funny. And like, oh.
I think I'm equal parts, both of them, you know. I would love to go and live in the country in a cabin, and I would still be making movies and using TikTok, you know. Like, maybe that's why I'm just like right at that midpoint between these two characters. So when they're disagreeing, I'm like, why can't you be both? But no,
this is amazing. I feel like for the first time, we disagree strongly, but we did watch the same movie. Whereas sometimes if we disagree, we're like, I don't feel like you watched the right movie. I don't feel like you got this movie. But I think we both understood what the movie's trying to do. And I think it is successful what it's trying to do. Not every film is going to please everybody. But it's interesting how strongly you've come on one side. I am honestly a little surprised, because I finished this movie going, I haven't laughed so hard in a very long time. I found it. Yeah, it's really fascinating. It's even fascinating to me. And now I'm talking to you, I'm like, what was I? Under some kind of trance? Was I just loving my day off work so much?
The critical response has been overwhelmingly positive. It's got rave reviews.
Yeah, I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a read through, and just like hearing you, you know, kind of explain your thoughts on it, I don't even really want to try and talk anyone out of loving this movie, because it's so kind of recognizably, you know, I can kind of appreciate what people are appreciating without having had appreciated it myself. So look, I don't think anyone's wrong for loving it. I just think it, you know, like one little thing that kind of, you know, they're referencing kind of this like 2000s era meme culture. And then there's like a moment, it's like 2005, and they do that Maya he, Maya ha, that song. And I think what they're doing
Live Your Life, Rihanna.
But they should be referencing the original song, which was that meme of that video, the guy dancing, but they're using the newer song, which samples that original song. So I'm like, you know, if you're the like in deep meme culture person that I think you are, you wouldn't use the Rihanna song, you'd use the original. You know what I mean? Like, just lots of little things. It's like the Furby thing. It's like, what? Why would there be...
I think the Furby thing is that connective tissue, though, of like, there's a middle generation like us who are like, I remember the Furby. And then it's like, we've brought back the Furby. And then like the monster giant Furby is like, why would you make a giant Furby? And that felt like the perfect balance to me of like, they're doing all these memes, and like there's the monkey meme where the monkey's like, "Rah, rah," and I'm like, I know that's a meme because I pick up context clues because I'm a human with a brain, but I don't know what that's a meme to because I haven't been on the meme game all my life. Like, I'm only recently getting into the Instagram and the TikToks and the things, so I actually don't know what that is referencing, but I get it. Whereas Furbies, I remember Furbies. I was alive during Furbies, you know, and it felt like that middle gap of things where they've brought something back for that. It's the perfect thing of like,
but
what's
why?
the cutest thing?
What's the cutest thing you can
find? What's the cutest thing you can find that will have subtitle captions that are like, "We will bring ultimate darkness to this world," and all those kind of lines that the Furbies have, which I found very, very funny. Like, to be honest.
I just felt like when it was said and done, I you could very comfortably omit that entire sequence from the film and change almost nothing about it. And when I start thinking that way, I start going like, why are you making me watch this? You know, what was the point? Was it just the Furby gag? Because it's not funny enough for me, I guess, to substantiate its existence, and it looks like it cost
Furby.
It just looks like it cost a lot of money. Yeah, but like a Furby is just such a like technologically the simplest thing ever. It's got like a little audio box and it moves its mouth and kind of wheels around ever so slightly. It's like, is this what the robots are gonna? I'm thinking too much about it, which is ridiculous. I think
it's because that sequence was like, okay, we're in a giant shopping mall kind of thing. It reminded me of like the mall sequence in season 3 of Stranger Things.
Yeah,
exactly.
I almost said that earlier.
Big circular mall.
But there's a meat monster, and a meat monster is way cooler than a Furby.
Oh, no, for sure. I think that's the best part of season 3, where that big meat monster finally... Yeah, let's not get into Stranger Things. We'll do that on another podcast.
We will.
Check it out at some point. But I think that kind of had the vibe of like, all right, we're going to the mall. We're doing the thing. We're going to put the thing into the thing. Oh my God, what's in a mall? Technology. Technology everywhere, Keiran. It's everywhere. Oh God, it's everywhere. And it's like, I am a toaster. I will toast you to death. I am a microwave. I will microwave you to death. And all these things. And they're like, okay, let's grab something that's dated, but what if they brought it back? What if they're trying to do a revival of a thing? What's something cute and cuddly that's going to be funny because it's so cute and cuddly that's now evil? As I'm saying this, I'm like, I hate it as I'm saying it. But I love it. I think that's what everything about this film. Yeah. If you wrote down on a piece of paper and went, Jax, I have this film idea and we're going to do this and this and this, and you put it up to me as a piece of paper, I'd be like...
You'd be the dad.
Keiran. Oh, yeah. Keiran.
You'd be the dad in the movie.
Keiran, I love you. Keiran, but I don't want you to fail. Oh, I don't want you to fail, and I don't think people are going to get this. But then you present it in the film. You cast the characters you cast. You do those extra colourful flourishes. Like, I swipe my hand and all the rainbows shoot out of it. I do a thumbs up, and there's a couple of love hearts, and the other character does a thumbs up, and a little bit of love hearts pop out of it. And it just does this... It has this vibe and this style that just really, for me, it won me over 2,000% to the point where I'm like, I don't even know why I didn't rewatch it today before we recorded this. Honestly, you were talking about that song, but I listened to Live Your Life, the Rihanna version, like 20 times before I recorded today. Just listening to it like, yeah, this song's so good. I'm just imagining them flying through the sky, and honestly, I'm not a guy who's going to get sentimental and heartwarming and too much stuff. Sometimes I'll just nod my head and be like, this is the bit where I feel good and everything feels good. But the bit where the dad and the daughter are like, she's like, we're going to play that play mix, remember in the car earlier when you're trying to connect with me? And I'm like, shut up, Dad. Dad, I'm not a 3-year-old kid anymore or anything. Don't play that song I don't like. I'm an adult now. I'm an adult woman. And then he plays it, and then, she plays it later in the movie. And she's like, I'm a he, I'm a ha, I'm a ha ha. And the dad's like, and then they just start like, they high-fiving and they're cutting through the zombies. Sorry, not the zombies, the robots. And my heart, Keiran, it's never been warmer. Oh, it was so warm. I'm like, oh, I'm getting a heat stroke. It's so warm in here. I'm sweating. I was just, like tears were getting the idea they could possibly formulate tears inside my eyeballs at some point. Like it was, I don't know. I was really engaged and really overwhelmed with emotion at that point. But I mean, I don't know. It's very basic kind of storytelling where it's like, The dad plays the song and the daughter loves it. The daughter like doesn't love it. Then she suggests it later, and it's everything. I understand why it wouldn't. It feels almost too basic with the setup then payoff, but
the flourishes is what made it work for you, I think. Yeah, that extra 10-20% that they add on all
the
kind of
colourful flourishes and visual style and character. And I think that there's the vibe. I felt like I'm gonna say this with another film we're gonna do soon, but what the director wanted to make, I can feel inside me. Like I look at it and I go, even if it didn't vibe with me, I understand 100% what they were going for. And I think for me at least, it paid off 100%. Like even 110%. Like I really think this is kind of a masterpiece for what it's trying to do. Even though it has a very uninteresting generic, I'm an iPod and you touched my face and I didn't like that because I'm an iPhone villain. It still really worked for me.
There was one gag I thought was funny, which is when Olivia Colman plays the iPhone, I think, and she I think something doesn't go her way and she just flips out and she's like, put me on the desk, and just vibrates around the table and flips around for a while. I thought that was pretty funny. That was a great just like gag, the way it was shot and staged, and yeah, the absurdity of it I enjoyed. There were a couple of little gags. I also there's something funny. South Park does this a lot. It did it maybe more in the early seasons than now, but the integration of just random live action elements in animation, I think is just inherently funny. Like they say, the photo frame we have, it just came with that photo, and it's just like a real photo in an animated world. I don't know. I enjoy that.
Yeah, that kind of absurdity and randomness, I really enjoyed.
Look, I'll just say, it's not a bad film. I think it does enough to, it hits its beats. It's thought these characters through. It's not the most innovative or groundbreaking in kind of anything it's doing, but it's really, you can feel the effort, the passion, all of that there. Just for whatever reason didn't connect with me. But did you have any other points that you wanted to discuss?
No, I think we've thoroughly covered it all. I think just in terms of like certain elements, like I just want to say one thing that I find kind of interesting, just a little tidbit, is that some of the writers for this film were writers on Gravity Falls, especially the first season, which is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I think it's got the greatest 4-part finale of all time. Those 2 seasons of Gravity Falls are some of the best stuff I've ever seen. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. And I remember you watched an episode and a half and didn't get into it. So maybe there's just something to the core of these writers that doesn't vibe with you.
I'm just a stick in the mud. Yeah.
No, but it's, I actually found it really kind of, maybe not refreshing, a little bit heartbreaking. Hearts break around my body. But it's like, I don't know, it's really interesting to hear this side of it, because honestly, I was so surprised by how much I loved this. Like, I was really overwhelmed by how much this film kind of took me over, to be honest. So it's really interesting to hear. I don't know, it's so interesting when you go, oh man, films aren't, everyone's just got a different take on the film and the way people view things. And I would be really interested by anyone listening, like, if they got anything different from what we've got, or if we've pretty much covered the 2 polar opposites of this film.
Yeah.
And if that's pretty much the 2 audiences this film has, where it just, it's 10 out of 10 or not 10 out of 10. I mean, I was going to say 0 out of 10, but I don't think you get it as 0 out of 10.
No,
right?
definitely not. No. And I think that, kids will have a good time with it, and probably anyone of that who's grown up in the internet, adolescence generation is gonna enjoy it too. And I wasn't in a bad mood when I watched it. I always try to go into movies like now, you talked about this recently. You said you listened to a podcast and there was a person on the podcast who hadn't watched the movie they were talking about, and it infuriated you. And I'm going to take that a step. I'm going to take that a step further, and I'm going to say that, like, I listened to a podcast recently. Might have been the same one. But the person had said that they watched this movie that I absolutely love, and they had watched it on their iPhone in their car. And I just thought, well, you didn't watch the movie then. You weren't in the movie, like, you know, seeing it in a cinema, or at the very least turning all your lights off and watching it on a big screen with a decent sound system or headphones, or, you know, like, you've lost a part of that immersion by the way you've watched it. And
Give
now,
it the due it's deserved, kind of thing.
yeah, now there's a disconnect for me where I don't know that I can take your opinion as seriously as if you had told me. You know, like a movie like Joker is a great example of like, and I'm kind of ripping off Quentin Tarantino here. I've been listening to a lot of him on podcasts. Okay. He says that the film Joker, if you didn't see it at the cinema, you didn't see it, because there was such an energy by the time you got to that moment in the movie where the Joker, where Arthur Fleck walks out onto the stage at the end, and he's in the makeup, and we've followed this character, and we're not sure where the lines between reality and the fiction made up in his head are blurred. Yet we have a deep sympathy for this character, and there's this energy in the audience, in the cinema, where you know if he didn't. Spoilers for Joker, sorry. If he didn't blow off that guy's head, people would have been angry when they walked out of the cinema. You know, that movie turned the entire audience into psychopaths who, and I mean, this guy's not worse than David Letterman or any other guy that makes fun of people on his, you know, his late night talk show. He's not an objectively bad person who deserves to be murdered, and even if you go back and listen to our Joker review, there's a part where you like really get behind the character, and you're like,
I know exactly what you're saying.
You get what you fucking deserve. And you know, I felt that, you felt that. Like, I remember walking out of the cinema and it was like permeating, and I don't know.
Oh my God, yeah.
I don't know that you have that collective like air of like that emotion. It's like, you know, what the Avengers movies, if you didn't see those in the cinema, you didn't get those moments. You didn't get those moments delivered.
Collective conscious feeling it together.
It was something else. That first Avengers movie, Infinity War, Endgame, they had moments like really visceral, like comedic or character moments that everyone was just on the same page for, especially if you go to like a midnight screening, you know, then it's just ramped up even more. But, you know, and maybe there's something to be said about that. But I definitely gave the Mitchells versus the Machines kind of everything I could. You know, the sound was good, the picture was good, I was relaxed, I wanted to enjoy it. So I think that's a big part of, you know, discussing anything, is you have to give the movie or the piece of content the respect it deserves, and a lot of people don't.
Can I just say, I 100% agree, especially if you're going to like sit and rag on it for a bloody hour or whatever. But can I just say, in terms of watching something on your iPhone, I don't think that necessarily means you haven't given it its due. For instance, back in ye old times before the COVID made this not an option, but I remember watching a film on my iPhone in a hostel in the I was gonna say team room, but that's not what it's called. Like just like the central area people would hang, and there's people checking in and checking out and all this stuff. But I'm sitting on like a beanbag or something, and I've got my iPod, which is like half the size of my face and stuff, and I watched A Quiet Place. Because I just woke up and I've been talking to someone the night before, and I found an area of the house, and there was stuff going on in the background, but I put my headphones in and I watched it on my tiny iPod, you know, 2 inches wide the iPod is or something, you know, something terribly small. But I watched that movie, and even if you watch something on a tiny screen, if you give it the time, I still found that film incredibly effective. And I remember thinking, I wouldn't even want to watch this in a cinema. What if someone's eating popcorn? And I had like 20 people checking in and out, eating, you know, breakfast in the background. And, you know, this is a big kind of open space. But I just think in terms of like, I don't think necessarily watching it on your iPhone or iPod or, you know, your tablet or something is necessarily not giving it the due it's deserved. But I think the mental space you give it when you're doing that might make more of an impact.
Well, that's why I think that, because for me, and this is personal, if I'm watching something on my iPhone, I don't care.
Okay. Well, if you're just imagine you're overseas and you don't get a big TV, and the only time you're going to watch this for the next year might be...
Yeah. That's a constraint of circumstance, which I understand. It's not so much like, if we did this and you were like, oh yeah, I just watched, this movie on my phone, I would be more inclined to be like, oh, well, bloody hell, Jax. Can you watch it on your big TV next time? Because, if you
My
watch...
big TV is for no movies. Movies if I'm... Yeah, no, I understand.
Because if you watch, say, like, Under the Skin on your phone, you're going to miss little visual details that are very, very subtle and discreet. And you know what? You're going to... If you're watching something on a phone... you're probably going to have headphones, so you're going to really get the sound design. And something like A Quiet Place, like you said, I think that movie's more sound than image, to be perfectly honest. So I think that it's much easier to get wrapped up in something like that, just because, for me, like the creature design and the visual effects don't particularly work. So maybe a smaller screen would actually improve that film a little.
You say that, and I'm like, didn't the creatures look incredible, Keiran? Didn't
Not
they look
on a
amazing?
60-inch 4K TV.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Just one last thing on the little screen to big screen. The amount of times overseas, because I watched Infinity War in Thailand when I was overseas, and so many times over my travels, I just kept watching it on my iPod, just again and again and again and again. And then I remember going over to your house at one point on your giant, amazing TV and just seeing Thanos, and I'm like, Thanos has stubble. Dude has stubble. Dude shaves. I never noticed that on my tiny 1-inch bloody iPod. He has stubble. And I was like, this film is next level now.
Yeah.
So you're right. You do miss little. Yeah, you're gonna miss big things and the little things like Thanos having stubble.
All right. Well, I think we pretty comprehensively covered all that, so I'm pretty happy to move on.
Yes. I will leave it on Mitchell's vs. the Machines, or hilarious visionary film, or generic robo-apocalypse family vacation movie. Who's to say?
We are. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please follow Spoiler Talk on Instagram. We're also on TikTok @Spoiler Talk. And follow our broadcasting network, BlackRock Broadcasting, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And please subscribe on YouTube, give this video a like, and we'll see you next time.
Catches!
Spoiler Talk is produced by KCBN Studios and Space Kraken Media.